Adeline.
What?
Adeline.
What?
I Spy with My Little Eye, a movie starring Dave Bautista and Kristen Shaw.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's like a 6 out of 10.
Is it Guardians of the Galaxy?
No. That movie is not starring Kristen Shaw, and that movie is like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. Is it WWE wrestling?
Maybe. I guess it could be. I don't know. Kristen Shaw seems like the kind of person who might have shown up in a WWE
Just for like a
match.
second.
Hey, Adeline.
Yeah.
I Spy with My Little Eye. The film we're talking about on the podcast today.
Is it Guardians of the Galaxy?
You need to come up with a better bit. That one's not working.
What is it?
Try again.
Is it... Dave Bautista hasn't been in that many movies.
No, he's been in plenty of movies.
Name another Dave Bautista movie.
Blade Runner 2049.
Alright. Is it Blade Runner 2049?
No.
Is it...
This is No Nerds Allowed. Hi.
Alright. Oh wait, it's not that one.
No, we have a new theme song because it's phase 2. Adeline.
Yes.
I Spy.
Jackson.
Adeline, why don't you describe the movie we're talking about today?
Alright, so I spy, my spy, we all spy for
for I Spy.
for I spy.
I Spy. I guess that sounds pretty good. It would be like kind of like an ice cream cake.
You put ice cream on pie, so
Yeah, I guess you could do that. I was thinking more like it was like a pie crust with like ice cream cake in the middle.
Well, it's just like a cheesecake but like cold.
Yeah, but it's like
Yeah.
but it's ice cream.
Yeah.
You'd call it ice pie. Or you could say ice pie with
No
my
one
little eye.
No one is stopping you from going to the grocery store, getting a pie crust, and just putting ice cream inside of it.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Anyway, TM. But so My Spy is a movie about Dave Bautista, and he's a spy. But then, whoopsie poopsie, get little girl show up, and then oh no, he like little girl, and oh no, little girl mom hot, and oh no, miscommunication. I was spying on you, but it was different than no, babe, where are you going, babe? No. And then Russian evil guy is like, haha, oh, then it's cool again.
I just want to call out Hot Rod for having that joke where in the movie when Will Arnett plays the asshole like other guy, and then Isla Fisher like breaks up with him to be with Andy Samberg, and Will Arnett's just like, babe, wait, babe. Babe, wait, babe! I think about that every time I watch any romantic comedy because every single one has that scene in it. And they've like managed to like perfectly coin something that has existed for so long.
Yeah.
It's such a perfect observation that I always think of it as the babe wait scene.
Yeah. Well, at this movie, it has that scene. Because it's a romantic comedy and we have to have that scene.
Yeah.
But it's better than most scenes of that variety.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is that Dave Bautista, he's like the big spy guy. He's like killing 12 people at once, but you can't do that when you're a spy. So he gets put on the bench and he's just monitoring this family. But then oh no, he falls in love with the family, and so that's the whole thing. But so, he kind of, reveals that he's the spy. It's nice that he, takes notice of the situation.
Right.
He's like, I am a spy. Hello,
that is
we have to
nice.
have this conversation. That's nice. And, they're mad at each other, but it's not over a miscommunication.
Right.
And that's what's nice. She's mad about him because he was a spy, and he was spying on her, and that's fair.
Right. See, I mean, I think that does make it better.
Yeah.
But I think the problem with that whole plot device is that no matter how you pull it off, you can see it coming from
10 billion miles away.
Eons away.
Yeah.
And it's not even because I'm not necessarily the type who thinks that a movie being predictable is always a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I think in a movie like this, it's like this event horizon you have to cross, and it's like this black hole sucking everything towards it. And the whole time you're just thinking, this is all leading up to that one scene that I know is going to be there where they have to confront the miscommunication, or he has to come clean and the romantic opposite is gonna be all mad, but then they'll make up later.
Yeah.
And, like, it just, like, it weirdly, like, I think the absolute worst version of it, I mean, not the worst version of it, but the version of it that I think most negatively impacts the movie it's in is Klaus.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is, like, the most, like, that movie's great.
Yeah.
But, like, the version of it in that movie, which is, like, literally, like, oh, he only has to be here because of this reason, and he's mad and he's trying to get fired. So he's doing a super bad job, but then he falls in love with the girl, but then later the girl finds out that actually he didn't want to be here, and he was just taking advantage of all of them for his own thing. And he's like, no, I mean, it's not like that. I mean, it was like that at first, but now I like you.
Babe, wait.
And, like...
I mean, not to just talk about Klaus for a little bit,
yeah.
but as beautiful and awesome and funny and fun as that movie is, and how much I, like, actually really enjoy its take on Santa Claus.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of plot issues.
Right.
And that's just, like, the biggest one.
Yeah.
Santa Claus dies at the end of that movie, but we, like, don't talk about it or see it.
But he, like, kind of low-key, like, kind of almost dies.
He's like a ghost now.
Yeah, he's a spirit, like, forever.
He's Jesus now.
But yeah, and it's, like, the thing about it is it's not just bad because you can see it coming.
Yeah.
Because, like, any blockbuster movie you see, you think, oh, they're gonna win a big battle at the end.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is that you're excited to see the big battle.
Yeah, you're excited to see what they do and how they do it.
Yeah, you're totally cool with them having a big battle and winning at the end. That's not the problem.
Yeah.
With this, the scene...
I'm watching Avengers and Iron Man's gonna shoot a guy with his hand. It's like, yeah, why are you mad?
But, like, with a movie like this, the, like, oh, the girl finds out the plot of the movie is like vegetables. Yeah. It's like, I know it's gonna happen, and you're just, like, dreading it the whole time, you know?
It's like the raisin in the cookie, and you've been, like, eating around the raisin the whole time, so now you have to commit to either throwing away the rest of the cookie or just eating the raisin.
Yeah. It's like the broccoli on your plate, and you're like, oh, I love this ham. Ooh, yum, I love this. This is Dave Bautista doing the whip. That's like the sweet potatoes. Oh, yum, yum. Oh, no. There's just green beans left now, and I have to eat.
I have to eat the green beans before I can have ice pie.
Yeah, before I can have ice pie. And the dessert is the big action set piece at the end, which is fine. Pretty
okay. We're kind of jumping all around in this movie.
Yeah.
It's because this movie came out today.
Right. So this movie is called My Spy.
Yes.
Not to be confused with the Paul Feig movie Spy from 2 years ago. Not to be confused with the Eddie Murphy movie I Spy from the 90s. Different thing. Yeah. This is My Spy. Because the little girl is, like, controlling Dave Bautista.
It's her spy.
She's the titular me. And, like, you know, this is the kind of movie that doesn't really take a lot of pitching.
No.
It's, like, it's one of those movies, we've talked a lot on this podcast about how, like, there aren't really, like, movie star movies anymore, quote unquote, where it's, like, the plot is kind of irrelevant. It's more just, like, check it out. It's
Dave Bautista.
Yeah. Or, like, you know, in the 90s, it was like, oh, check it out. It's Cameron Diaz.
Yeah.
And, like, people would show up. They'd be like, yeah, I don't know. It's like a rom-com or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I like Cameron Diaz, though. And this is, like, one of the few movies of the 21st century. And, like, Dave Bautista is, like, one of the few people who's starting to consistently be able to pull this off. It's just, like, it's like one of those, like, spy movies, and it's like a romantic comedy, and there's been like 100 of them. Usually it's Jackie Chan, but this time it's Dave Bautista.
See,
you know,
I haven't seen Blade Runner 2049. In that movie, does he play a big, strong man who lost family?
I don't remember if he lost his family.
Yeah.
He's not in it for like a super long time.
Yeah.
He's just in it for one scene. But got very little glasses.
Gotcha.
That's
Don't
the
get
best
me
part
wrong.
of him.
I fucking love big, strong guy lost family.
Yeah,
I love that, and he does a great job of playing that character. I was just wondering if that's the only character that he's played.
Yeah, well, his movie star persona has always been based around sort of a gentle giant, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I know Drax isn't exactly gentle, but he's like a big, tough guy who has feelings.
Yeah.
Is kind of a big, tough guy who is actually very sad.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
kind of his type.
Yeah. I mean, like, honestly, his performance as Drax is so good.
Dave Bautista, like, I want to talk about Dave Bautista, okay? Because he is the only person on planet Earth who looks like that.
Like Dave Bautista.
And, like, his neck is the same width as his head.
Yeah.
And he looks like a mountain. His shoulders are just enormous.
Yeah.
He looks, I said this to you, he looks like the Paramount logo.
Yeah.
He looks like the Matterhorn, like, physically. And he was in WWE for a really long time. I don't think he had, like, a persona. I think he was just Dave Bautista.
Yeah, probably. Because I never knew who Dave... I said Babe.
Hell yeah.
Babe Bautista.
More like Babe Bautista.
But Dave Bautista, like, I didn't... Like, somebody told me that he was from WWE. And I was like, that makes total sense.
Tracks, yeah.
That makes sense. But, like, I don't know. Like, when you say, like, oh, The Rock used to be WWE, like, I have a picture of, like, The Rock from WWE.
Right.
He's, like, wearing the tank top and he's got his tattoos or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't have that kind of image for Dave Bautista, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't have any information.
Right. Yeah, I don't think he was ever, like, one of the big popular ones.
Yeah.
But he sort of made a name for himself in his, like, I think he was still in WWE at the time, but he started doing a whole bunch of, like, straight-to-DVD dad action movies alongside, like, Bruce Willis or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, the kind of stuff you see at Redbox, and you're like, how is Sylvester Stallone in this?
Yeah.
And it came out this year, and I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Dave Bautista's in a lot of those.
Gotcha.
And then Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously, where he plays Drax, was kind of his big break. Like, where he was doing, like, a genuinely, like, really good performance in, like, a more sort of respectable role than, like, the big tough guy. Oh, he's in a couple of the Scorpion King movies.
Oh.
Also, alongside Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Gotcha. Scorpion King, based off of The Mummy.
So, okay.
Gotcha. This
is a fun fact. You want to hear a fun fact about Scorpion King 3?
Yeah, uh-huh.
That's a prequel to Scorpion King.
Alright.
Which is a spin-off of The Mummy 2.
Yes.
Which is a sequel to The Mummy 1,
yes.
Which is a remake of The Mummy from 1950.
Yes.
So Scorpion King 3, featuring Dave Bautista, is the prequel... No, actually, I think I have that backwards. Scorpion King 2 is the prequel to 1, and Scorpion King 3 takes place in between.
Gotcha.
So it is a sequel to a prequel to a spin-off to a sequel to a remake.
God.
So anyway, that's just a good movie.
Man, maybe the Scorpion King movies are bad.
There's 4 of them.
There's 4 of them?
There are 4 Scorpion King movies.
We watched the first one, and it was just kind of like nothing.
Yeah.
And then they decided to make 3 more after that, so you know what?
There are more Scorpion King movies than there are Mummy movies in that franchise. Which is why they're super good.
They're all great.
But yeah, and like, you know, I've just been thinking a lot about, like, different, like, actors and, like, what their sort of, like, personas are and what they can, like, reliably pull off.
Yeah.
And Dave Bautista is one of those guys who is so, like, dialed into his particular thing. I mean, like I said, he's good at, like, big, strong guys who are actually very sad.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he is in Guardians of the Galaxy. That's what he is in this movie. That's what he is in Blade Runner 2049, in Hotel Artemis, which was a movie that most people hated, but I thought was pretty good.
It seemed like a really fun concept.
Hotel Artemis was, when it came out, everyone was really excited about it because it had, like, the most insane stacked cast.
Yeah.
It was, like, Zachary Quinto and Jeff Goldblum and Jodie Foster and Dave Bautista and Jenny Slate.
Yeah.
Like, and probably some others that I'm even forgetting. Like, it was just, Charlie Day was in it, Sophia Boutella. It was, like, everybody and their brother was in Hotel Artemis. And everyone was like, this movie's gonna rip, right? Like, it seems like it rips. It was, like, a cool sci-fi idea, like an original screenplay. And then it came out and everybody was like, this kind of sucks, actually. And then I saw it and I was like, no, actually this rips. Like, I'm pretty into it.
Yeah.
And then I, like, totally forgot about it, like, a month later. So,
and then I forgot to make a tweet about how I liked it.
Yeah, like, and I did like it, but it's like, even at the end of the day, despite all that, it was still kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
Brian Tyree Henry was in it. Maybe I should revisit that. That's one of those movies that I'm going to think back on and be like, oh, actually, maybe that movie's really good. And then I'm going to watch it and I'll be like, oh, no, that was actually just, like, kind of mediocre.
Just okay.
I'm only remembering the cool parts
of it. Well, because when you like something and that thing is, like, just okay, but everyone else is like, this is bad, I'm like, actually, it's great. Like, that's just what I'm like. Actually, it's a masterpiece.
There's a really good sequence
We're talking about, like, Shrek 3 or something. Actually, it's like a cinematic masterpiece.
There's a really good scene in Hotel Artemis where Dave Bautista, like, attacks, like, a like a mob of people with a hatchet.
Yeah.
Like a fireman's axe.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
That's great.
But he's just the same kind of thing. He's like a sensitive guy who's just like a huge mountain, you know?
It's someone's using the mountain for bad, but he just wants to use the mountain for love.
Yeah.
So this, to get back on track with My Spy.
Yeah.
Like, at what it is, just in general, I think is kind of weird. Because it seems... So, with the kids I babysit, I watched the new Annie movie with Black Annie.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it was...
It's a hard knock life.
Yeah. It's not good. But it's... Like, it had substance, and it was a story,
right.
but it was, like, a kid's movie. Like, it had, like, she's cool, but she has fun clothes, and she's quirky, and she goes to, like, a big house with all the fun technology.
She's wearing, like, leggings with a skirt and a vest.
Exactly. And then they fall in love, and she has a dog. Like, it's very kids, like, quote-unquote action movie.
Right,
like, that's what that Annie was. And this kind of seems like they took that Annie... but then just made it, like, a little bit for adults.
Right.
Like, this whole movie seems very kid-oriented. Not only because we have a kid protagonist, but, like, in the way that kid protagonist is framed, it seems like she is for the kids. She's a kid protagonist for kids, because she's unrealistic and bratty.
Right.
If she was a kid protagonist for adults, I feel like I would have liked her a lot more because she didn't have to be, like, the kid protagonist.
Right.
She could just be, like, a child person.
Yeah, well, because every kid wants to be taken more seriously.
Yeah.
And, like, seeing a kid who's really smart and, like, nobody understands them and, like, actually she can just do whatever she wants. It's like, kids are like, hell yeah, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, well, it's like, this kind of story... This kind of, like, character interaction is, like, my whole jam. I love that shit so much.
Right.
It's, like, big, strong man learns to be a better person because of friendship with girl. I'm like, hell yes, that's my shit. I love the juxtaposition. I think it's great.
Right.
And, like, I love Dave Bautista's interactions with the little girl and, like, how his character develops. Like, I really, really like that. But then the little girl kind of ruins it because I don't like her that much.
She's a little annoying.
She's a little much.
She has moments.
She does have moments. Like, the last half of the movie, I think she becomes a realistic little girl. I love that line. I literally, like, looked over at Jackson because they're, like, spying on them, and then she, like, the little girl walks into the room where they're spying on her. And I was like, man, I really hope she walks in. I was, like, joking. I was like, I really hope that they walk in, and they're like, wow, this little girl's a bitch. I hate her. But then they literally said that in the movie, so they knew what I was thinking.
Right.
And that was great. It's like, she's just too much. Like, she gives me the vibes of, like, a kid actor who's, like, too removed from their childhood, even though they are a kid. That they, like, can't be a kid anymore.
They think they're, like, weirdly above childhood.
Yeah, she, like, gives me those kind of vibes.
Yeah. And I think that, like, I'm trying to remember, like, what my favorite moments of her are. Like, the whole thing is, like, Dave Bautista spying on this family because the mom used to be married to a crime lord, I guess.
Yeah.
Who died.
Yeah.
So now she's a single mom trying her best.
Yeah.
With a young daughter. And Dave Bautista is supposed to spy on her to be like, just to make sure that the family of the dead crime boss, make sure she's not, like, involved in it or whatever.
Yeah.
And then then the little girl finds out and she starts, like, extorting him to, like, take her to birthday parties and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah.
She, like, gets the dirt on them and she's like, I'm gonna report you to the government and I'm gonna get you fired unless you take me ice skating.
Yeah.
And he's just like, okay, I guess.
See, the two things about this movie, it's definitely a spy movie written by people who have never written a spy movie before.
Right.
It's got those vibes big time.
Yeah.
It looks like somebody watched Mission Impossible and then was like, I could do that. I'm a comedy director. I could do that.
Right.
But then it also, it's, like, it just got kid movie vibes all over it. But, like, not even the good parts of kid movies. Like, the bad parts of kid movies.
Yeah.
Like, kids movies written by adults that don't have children or have never spoken to a child.
Right.
Where she's, like, on the bus. We're trying to show that she's getting bullied and she has no friends. So the scene starts off. She's getting on the bus. The bus opens. And she just stands there. So two boys shove past her to get on the bus. understandable because she's just standing in front of the bus doors.
Right.
But then I'm supposed to feel bad for her because they shoved her.
Right.
Then she gets on the bus. She starts talking to these girls. And they're like, oh my god, do you have jelly on your face? I'm taking a picture of this and posting on Instagram. And then it's like, oh wow, the future of bullying.
Yeah.
And then they go to their phone and they go, it got 8 likes already. Yeah. It's just, and she's always worried about like going to parties. Like it feels like no third grader is worried about partying.
Right. We talk a lot about how like the portrayal of like bullying in movies is so weird. I guess I should say like modern bullying because like the cultural language around bullying is still like stuck in the 80s where it's like there's like a popular girl or like a tough jock who like either depending is either beats you up after class and shoves you in your locker, or if they're a girl,
they cyberbully you.
Well, not even cyberbully you. They're just like catty and mean to you and spread rumors about you that you're a slut or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't look anything like that.
Yeah, the girl who bullied me in elementary school, I had a weird bully in elementary school because I knew that she had a super hard life. So I just tried, like, her dad was, like, in prison and she just, like, took it out on me. So I was, like, weirdly okay with it because I knew her life was bad. It was weird.
But, like, we talk about how, like, we always bring up Spider-Man Homecoming as, like, one of the few things that has ever, like, felt really genuine to, like, the high school experience of the 21st century. And, like, the ways that, like, sort of bullying actually manifests. And this movie is, like, the worst version of that, where they just, like, pretend that bullying still looks exactly the same as it did in the 80s, but then you just add Instagram to the words that they use,
well, and it's, like, I've heard this conversation with, like, in regards to, like, actual bullying, where it's, like, if you're doing any kind of, like, anti-bullying thing, but you won't talk about, like, what actually causes people to bully other people, which is usually they're not white or not straight or not neurotypical. Like, if you don't address, like, those problems, then you're not really addressing bullying.
Right.
And not to kind of shove that onto movies, but, like, they just, like, oh, she's bullied because she's new. And it's like, that's not why people get bullied. If you're the new kid in school, you're, like, the cool kid because you're, like, new and mysterious. Right. And third graders don't know about any of this shit. Like, Dave Bautista comes up to the class for bring your parent or special friend to school day. Such a weird scene. And he's just like, oh, I'm a garbage man, but right now I'm unemployed. And then, or he's like, right now I don't have a job right now. And one of the kids goes, that's unemployed. And then they all laugh. And it's like, no third grader is like, he doesn't have a job? How gross. It's like, that's not a thing unless you're at, like, a weird elite private school. Like,
and so the way, what was I talking about? Oh, because, like, basically the whole movie, and we should also talk about Kristen Schaal, who's like the guy in the chair in this movie, who's like the cyber hacker, but she wants to be in the field, you know. She's like Simon Pegg in Mission, I almost said Mr. Impossible. Like Simon Pegg in Mission Impossible.
Mr. Impossible?
Is there a Mr. Impossible? But, like, so that's, like, sort of the part of the narrative tension of this thing, right? Mm-hmm. Is, like, oh, she really wants to be out in the field and be a secret agent, but Dave Bautista's like, no, fuck you, you're just a nerd. I won't teach you how to be a secret agent. But then, like, low-key, he starts teaching the little girl how to be a secret agent, and she's like, what the fuck? You said you wouldn't teach me how to be a secret agent, now you're teaching a 9-year-old how to be a secret agent.
Yeah.
And, like, I think that's a fun thing. I just like Kristen Schaal in this movie. I think she's funny.
Well, she plays a fun character because she's a little bit of, like, the nerd that nobody likes, but I feel like they do that in, like, a realistic way for, like, a work setting.
Right.
Like, there's people that people don't like at work, but it kind of goes back to, like, the high school bullying. Like, if there's a person you don't like at work, you kind of just, like, casually don't like that person. Right, yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of bullying scenes in, like, work settings, and I'm like, this can't be how this happens. There is an HR, right? Like, this doesn't feel real or right.
Right. I remember what I was going to say. We talked on our Sonic the Hedgehog episode a lot about the sort of, like, genre of, like, family action comedy for kids that, like, used to happen a lot and doesn't really happen much anymore. I think Annie's a great example of one of those. It's not as much like an action movie, but...
No, she does get into, like, a helicopter, like, twice.
But...
I think at the end of the movie, when she gets, like, kidnapped by the people who are pretending to be her parents, I think there's, like, more guns in that scene than in the original.
Right.
But, like, that's, like, it.
Yeah, and this movie is kind of a lot of things that don't really happen very often anymore. Like, it's like a studio romantic comedy. It's like a movie that's sort of an action movie that's kind of aimed at kids. It's like just sort of a medium budget, like, sort of nonsense movie,
like
you know?
anything.
And, like, and it's like a movie star driven movie.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about that kind of movie, is that, like, it's predicated on, like, you don't really care that much about the pitch, and that's gonna be kind of nothing. It's like, oh, there's a board game and you get sucked into it, I guess. Robin Williams is in it.
Robin Williams gets stranded in a board game for 10 billion years.
There's a guy and he puts on a mask and turns into a crazy guy. It's Jim Carrey, though, so, like, you know.
How dare you bring up the mask?
I'm just saying it's like that kind of movie.
Yeah.
And, like, this is, it's like, he's a spy, but he gets, like, caught by a little girl and whatever. But it's Dave Bautista, and you'll watch him do anything, because he's extremely charismatic and handsome, and, like, just hang on. It'll be fine. And I was like, yeah, it was fine.
It was fine.
And I just, like, straight up, I'll watch Dave Bautista do anything.
I know,
like,
really?
and I like that this is the first movie that just sort of lets him be, like, a handsome romantic lead, you know?
Yeah, it is cool to have, like, just, like, kind of, like, a big, huge guy, just kind of, like, let him, like, be handsome. Like, it doesn't,
right.
like, they kind of make a joke that, like, his fashion is, like, out of, like, taste or whatever.
Right.
But, like, it's nice to see, like, the romantic lead that isn't, like, the same white guy with the same kind of beard and same wavy haircut, you know? Like,
and, like, I think that sort of, I don't know, it's weird because there are a lot of, like, big hulking, like, WWE guys who have been, like, sort of, like, not necessarily, like, romantic leads, but, like, leads in movies before.
Yeah.
I think that, like, what immediately comes to mind is, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I would not describe as handsome.
Yeah.
He's, like, big and huge and scary and whatever.
Young him is pretty handsome.
You thinking of, like, when he's, like, a bodybuilder and he's, like, all airbrushed up?
No,
and,
I'm
like,
thinking, like, I think he's pretty handsome in Terminator 1.
Terminator 1? Yeah, I suppose so. I don't know. Maybe I just don't.
Well, you're just thinking of, like, older, spiky hair.
Yeah.
And that's not...
What I'm imagining is, like, Kindergarten Cop era.
Did you know that's what Silent Hill was based off of?
Kindergarten Cop?
Well, no, there's, like, a bunch of posters in Silent Hill that are exactly the same from Kindergarten Cop.
Oh, really?
And it's, like, a behind-the-scenes thing. I don't remember what the exact, like, thing is, but it's, like, they had a copy of Kindergarten Cop, and that's, like, the only way that they knew, like, the English to put in the game or something like that. So there's, like, all these posters that are, like,
that's
exactly
hilarious.
from Kindergarten Cop.
This movie also is basically just Kindergarten Cop.
He's pretty handsome.
I don't know. I don't feel it. But, like... And the same can be said for, like, John Cena. Like, not that any of these people are, like, ugly.
John Cena's gotten handsome lately, though.
Now that he's grown out his hair, he can kind of get it.
Yeah, no, but, yeah, like, WWE John Cena is not...
not a handsome guy.
Not a look.
But that's the weird thing about, like, people in general.
Who's hot and who's
yeah.
not.
And I don't think Dwayne The Rock Johnson is, like, a hot guy. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's a weird thing where it's like, if you just, like, look at his face, you'd be like, yeah, whatever. But he's, like, charismatic, and that's, like, kind of its own thing.
And then he smiles, and he sings, "You're welcome," and you're like, oh.
But, like, I don't know, point being, of all the, like, huge movie stars who, like, started out as bodybuilders or wrestlers and then became movie stars, I think Dave Bautista is, like, the most genuinely handsome out of all of them. Yeah. And, like... And he's just one of those people, I think I've said this before on the podcast, like, in order to be truly hot, you have to be at least a little bit ugly. Yeah. I feel like that's Dave Bautista's vibe to a T. Because, like, in this movie where he's just, like, wearing, like, a cardigan and, like, a jacket, and you're like, oh, hell yeah, Dave, get it.
Yeah.
What are you Googling?
I'm trying to look up that Kindergarten Cop Silent Hill thing.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm trying to figure out what the story was. Yeah, there's a bunch of posters in Silent Hill that are from Kindergarten Cop. I don't remember the story of why, though.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I should play Silent Hill.
We should play Silent Hill.
But yeah, and it's like... I don't know. But yeah, that's the weird thing about people. What I've found in my life is that, like, basically anybody can be handsome if they're just, like, styled well and, like, wearing nice clothes and seem confident, you know?
Yeah.
Stop looking at your phone.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out why the school in Silent Hill is based off the school in Kindergarten Cop. I'm trying to figure out why.
And it's like John Cena in like Fast and Furious 9, and he's like got good hair and like wearing nice clothes, and you're like, oh yeah, John Cena.
Yeah.
But then like when he's like in Bumblebee and he's like got a buzz cut and like in military fatigues, you're like, I could kind of take a lead.
They're always like, women love a man in uniform. It's like, I like a handsome man in uniform, not to be terribly mean, but you know what I mean? Like, you can't just stick any man in a police uniform and be like, is he hot now? And the answer is no.
Right. But yeah, that's basically all I'm trying to say is like Dave Bautista can totally get it in this movie. And it's just like, I don't know, it's kind of cool because he's not the kind of guy who gets to get it in this kind of movie, you know?
Does Rex get it ever? Not Rex. What? Drax. Why did
Drax?
I think his name was Rex?
No, I don't think Drax can get it. I don't think you're supposed to think that Drax can get it.
I think Drax can get it. You don't think Drax can get it?
He's just like green and bald.
He's red and bald.
He's got red tattoos. He's got green skin.
He's like a grayish green. He's like Ganondorf.
It's not red.
His tattoos are red and they're all over his body.
Okay, I don't know.
If he's standing far away from you and you blur your eyes, he's red.
Okay. I don't think Drax can get it.
Well,
I think he can get it in Blade Runner 2049 in more like a just like shy, like kid that you kind of feel bad for kind of way.
Yeah.
You should watch Blade Runner 2049. You should watch at least the Dave Bautista scene from Blade Runner 2049.
Where he kills a bunch of people with a hatchet?
No, that's in Hotel Artemis.
Oh, gotcha.
In Blade Runner 2049, he's just like a guy. No, he's an android who runs a farm. He just like lives by himself on a farm and it's just like kind of doing him. And then Ryan Gosling shows up. He's like, hey, it's my job to kill you. And he's just like this guy hanging out by himself, and he's like wearing these little glasses, and he's like giant, and just like doing him. And you're like, oh no, Dave, you gotta get out of this. I'm trying to remember what happens. I know I know he definitely grabs Ryan Gosling's head and shoves him through a wall at one point.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Ryan Gosling actually kills him at the end or not, though. I think he like figures out some way to get around it. I haven't seen Blade Runner 2049 since it came out in theaters. I just remember it's like a super good scene. And I can remember it, like, visually.
Yeah.
I don't remember what happens at the end, though. Anyway, but regardless of whether or not Dave Bautista can get it.
Yeah.
Kindergarten Cop is, like, I don't know, it's just, like, a perfectly serviceable way to spend an hour and a half, you know?
We're not talking about Kindergarten Cop, Jackson.
Oh, did I say Kindergarten Cop?
You did.
It's because I have Kindergarten Cop up on the screen.
Yeah, you're looking at 1,200 different pictures of Kindergarten Cop right now.
My Spy, the movie we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Is, like, it's totally fine. Like, there's a lot that kind of sucks about it.
Yeah.
And it's, like, the narrative totally doesn't really matter. And, like, the actual conflict of it is kind of minimal.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, they cut back to the bad guys doing a bad guy thing.
There's a really long stretch of time where they're, like, showing you, like, because they put another agent in the field to, like, actually deal with the bad guy while they're just doing recon.
Right.
And so there's several times where we're, like, going to the bad guy, and he's like, I need the MacGuffin, where is it? And he's like, oh, it's here. And it's like, oh, they go to get that, but then they get exploded, so they think he's dead.
Right.
And, like, all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm following what we're doing. I just have no clue how that's gonna intertwine back into what Dave Bautista's doing.
It's kind of nothing. Honestly, like, I think it would be more fun if you just didn't ever cut back to them. Like, just let his whole thing sort of play out. Yeah. And then at the end, the bad guys that you kind of set up in the beginning, but you've just now kind of forgotten about.
Yeah. Now
they just show up at the end. You're like, oh shit, from before.
Yeah, because he's forgotten about them.
Yeah, exactly.
So we should forget about them. Yeah.
And it has very little to do with the actual story that's, like, playing out, besides that they come back at the end and there's, like, sort of an action set piece, because you gotta have that in this kind of movie.
Jackson, this is a MacGuffin.
Yeah, what even
It could be anything. It's like a flash drive with nuclear codes on it.
Oh, right. Yeah, it could be anything.
It could be anything. It could be a magic crystal.
See, that's the thing about a MacGuffin, right?
Yes.
Not inherently a bad thing.
No.
We've talked about this on the podcast before.
Yes.
But because the whole idea is that it's just an object that incites the conflict that gets everything else moving.
Yeah.
But if there's not a second domino that it knocks over, then it's pointless.
Yeah.
Like, the best way to think about a MacGuffin is like Pulp Fiction, right? there's this briefcase they're trying to get, and you never know what's in it. All that matters is that it's a briefcase. But because they're trying to do that, all these other things happen, and the briefcase sort of becomes the least important part of it, you know? Yeah. And it, like, spins off into character conflicts, it spins off into, like, just practical conflicts. Like, all these things happen because of this thing, but that thing isn't played like it's the most important part of the story, you know? Yeah. In this movie, it's just like, we gotta get the flash drive, so now we're gonna shoot at you. Yeah. It's like, this isn't satisfying.
I do think that the whole kind of, like, the whole movie, we have a really pretty fun action set piece at the very beginning. It does sometimes feel like an action scene written by people who have never written an action scene before.
I don't think it's very good.
Well, there are parts that I like about it, and parts that I think, like, there are seeds of good ideas that I think could have been better executed. Yeah. Like, there's, like, definitely an homage to Atomic Blonde that I feel like could have been better.
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing. So, I think it's just a weird coincidence. The opening action sequence is all, like, bathed in this, like, teal light. Yeah. And there's a point where he gets in a car and turns on the radio and 99 Luftballons starts playing, which is, like, just, like... There's an action sequence in Atomic Blonde where 99 Luftballons starts playing and everything's, like, teal lit. Yeah. And I think it's just a coincidence. I don't think they were trying to make an homage. It's just weird, though.
Well, because there's so many needle drops in this movie, and they're all kind of bad. Like, that's another kids movie vibe, where the music is just ridiculous and doesn't add anything. That's very kids movie.
And the score is, like, there's absolutely no nuance to the score whatsoever. Yeah. It's, like, literally... First of all, there's only really scoring for probably, like, 8 minutes of the movie total. Yeah. Because the rest of the time, it's just, like, pop song needle drops all the time. And when there is score, it's just, like, whatever the one emotion is, just, like, crank that up. Yeah. There's one where it's like, Dave Bautista, right at the beginning, got set to an assignment he didn't like, so now he has to do surveillance with Kristen Shaw. And, like, there's a quick little bit of, like, him, like, going home and, like, going to bed and, like, feeding his fish or whatever. Yeah. And, like, the score that plays, it sounds like the score of, like, a married couple who just found out that they had a miscarriage. Yeah. It's, for some reason, that scene plays, like, the most horrible tragedy. Yeah. Like, the way the way the score is and the way the scenes are blocked, it sounds like he just found out that his son died. Yeah. Like, it feels just insanely just, like, cranked up to 11, and I don't understand why they felt like they had to go so hard.
Yeah. Well, it's like they have that kind of thing in the beginning where he, like, gets in the car and starts playing 99 Red Balloons, and then he starts, like, changing the radio station and, like, different songs come on. It's that joke where they're all, like, girly or sad or whatever, so you keep trying to change them. But I think that could have been really cool if every time the song played, we, like, hit it and, like, changed the way that the scene felt, or, like, the blocking changed, or, like, cool. If it, like, actually, like, changed the vibe of the action scene.
That would be, like, a very Scott Pilgrim-y move.
Yeah, like, every time you, like, switched it and the music changed, it, like, totally changed how the scene felt. That would have been awesome. Right. But instead, it just kind of plays like the goof from Zootopia, where it's, like, all the sad radio stations, and, like, the scene doesn't change at all. And it's, like, But then, directly after that, there's the dopest thing in the movie, where there's a guy with a bazooka behind him, and a guy with a bazooka in front of him. But the car's driving so they don't see each other, so he, like, turns at the last second when they both fire, and they just shoot straight into each other, and it's the coolest thing.
That was pretty tight.
That's, like, the only good action thing in the whole movie, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, that was, like, the one moment I was like, ooh, that was cool. That was a good one. That would, like, kind of got me excited. I was like, oh, maybe this movie is kind of gonna rip, and then it was fine. Yeah.
Nothing ripped as hard as
that. And there's this whole bit they do at the beginning. It's trying really, really hard to be stylish. Yeah. But it's still... The whole thing still just feels inexpensive, you know? Yeah. And, like, they're like, that opening sequence, he's, like, fighting a whole bunch of guys at once, and everything's, like, lit with this one really specific color. And it's really trying to tap into the whole, like, John Wick, Atomic Blonde, Blade Runner thing, where, like, we're, like, really conscientious of color and, like, really good choreography. But the choreography's kind of boring. And the editing is, like, not great.
Basic, yeah.
And they keep doing this thing where they keep doing, like, Zack Snyder slow-mo whenever he, like, does something cool. But, like, the slow-mo, like, lasts way too long.
And it's kind of hard to read.
Yeah, and the thing we're seeing happen in slow motion is, like, not that cool in the first place. Yeah. So you're like, I guess. It's like he punches a guy and he flies backwards, and then we watch the guy fly backwards in slow motion for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he like does something else, and then something blows up and a couple of guys get flown backwards, and then they happen in slow motion. You're like, it's not really the point of this.
Yeah.
Like, you want to draw out a moment that you want to be drawn out, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the thing about, like, 300 is, like, every single, like, shot in that movie is, like, totally maximalist and, like, turned up to 1,000 in terms of, like, how much tight shit can we get on the screen at any given moment. So, like, when something crazy happens and suddenly it goes into slow motion, you're like, whoa! Like, 300 is not the best movie in the world, but it's, like... When something happens in slow motion, it's because it's something that rules. Yeah. That you, like, enjoy, like, stretching out that moment, you know?
Yeah.
When it's just, like, a guy getting punched, you're like...
Well, they, like, do it... They do it to the reaction of something cool and not the something cool.
Right.
It's like he shoots a tanker of gasoline and a tanker explodes and guys go flying. And then what slow-mo does the guys flying and not the tanker and exploding.
Right,
and it's like they just like picked the wrong thing. Like it's an action movie made by people who have never made an action movie before. Because it's a comedy director.
Let me see. I want to see who directed it.
And the also directed by, it was like the Fat Albert movie and like the Naked Gun 33 and a half or whatever. 33 and a third.
Peter Sagal. Not NPR Peter Sagal.
Peter Sagal?
Yeah.
Oh, he did Get Smart.
Yes, that seems right. So yeah, I did 50 First Dates and Get Smart and Tommy Boy and Naked Gun 3.
Gotcha.
Which I think was bad? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I watched the first Naked Gun a little while ago.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Good flick.
Yeah, I walked in and out, and you and Dad were laughing.
Yeah. The cool thing about Naked Gun is that O.J. Simpson is in it. Yeah. And the even cooler thing is that he's pretty good in it.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. There's this bit in Naked Gun where O.J. Simpson is like this police officer who like busts this big room full of drug dealers or whatever. Yeah. And he like goes in, he's like... And then all the guys, like, shoot him a whole bunch of times. He's like, oh! And then he, like, falls over against a wall that says wet paint. And he's like, oh, no!
And he falls into the other thing and does, like, 1,200... Yeah.
It's so funny.
Oh, that's O.J. Simpson?
That's O.J. Simpson.
Oh, yeah, he did. He was great in that scene.
Yeah, no, he's, like, really funny in Naked Gun.
Yeah.
And then he killed a guy and...
in the movie. Yeah. In the movie.
No, in real life.
Oh.
That's what I'm referring to. My Spy.
Yes.
Dave Bautista can kind of get it. So, and yeah, all the action in this movie kind of blows.
Why is every single mom trying her best always a nurse?
Yeah, that's just like kind of the hardest job.
It is the hardest job, but it just also feels like the easiest hardest job. You know, like if you're like, oh, we need a hard job. She's a nurse. It's like, okay.
Well, because
there are other hard jobs.
Honestly, I think the reality is that a lot of the other like really hard jobs, like, oh, I'm like a crab fisher or like something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I think genuinely in terms of like the kinds of jobs that like a person in a city could have, nurse is kind of like the most exhausting, most brutal jobs of all of them.
Yeah.
But even if you were like, oh, she's like any other job would feel slightly more masculine. Yeah. And I don't think it is that they don't want the woman to have a masculine job. I think genuinely the reality is that if the job feels too masculine, it'll feel like they're trying to prove something.
Yeah, I get that. And this is kind of... There was a conversation during the production of Mary Poppins, because the whole thing is that in the book, the mom doesn't have a job, and the nanny still comes over to help. And so when they made the movie, they're like, oh, we have to have the mom do something. And like the conversation of like, well, maybe she's just a shitty mom. Like, maybe she just needs help. Like, and I think there's something kind of empowering about that like some women aren't perfect and you don't have to have the hardest job in the world to struggle as a mother. You know, like if she was just like, if she just had a regular job, it's like, oh, she's just an office worker, but she works a lot and sometimes it's hard for her to like get home on time. It's like, I feel like that's a little bit even like more relatable than she's got the hardest possible job that she can have. And yet she's still like basically always home all the time in this movie. It's just like, I feel like it would be more humanizing and like more relatable if she just had like a regular job.
She like was a secretary or something.
Yeah. Well, because
she's like, she works Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah, like it's just like having children is hard, and you don't have to have the hardest thing in the world on top of that in order to have having a child hard.
Yeah, I'll say it. having a kid, pretty hard thing to do. Thing.
From experience? Don't have one. Yeah. But I can tell. As someone who does not have children.
So, okay. 2 things we gotta get out of the way.
Yes.
First of all, scene where Dave Bautista dances.
Really good.
Great.
I love that scene so much. Half because Dave Bautista is just like dancing like a dad and it's great.
Yeah.
But because every extra in that scene
is also great.
So supportive and happy and all. What's the dance? I'm 19. I don't know anything anymore. What's the dance where you move your fist and kick your leg at the same time?
I don't know what that dance is called.
I don't know what it's called. It's been around and I've definitely done it before. But like when like he starts doing that like poorly, but then you look at all the extras and they're like also doing it, but like better than him. But they're all like, yeah. It's
all like, the extras all the extras in that scene are reacting like me watching the movie. Yeah, they're like, oh, this is so great.
They're like, Dave Bautista's doing the whip. We should also do the whip.
Dave Bautista hits the hardest whip in human history in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's so great. He just like, because that's like kind of the thing is like doesn't really know how to dance. He's just kind of winging it.
Yeah.
But there's this moment where like, you know, he's like doing all these, they're not like moves per se, but he's like just kind of dancing. Yeah. And then you like cut to a reaction shot of somebody and then you cut back and you can see like Dave Bautista's like entire weight, like see him like shift like a sumo wrestler onto one leg and then just like come crashing down with this like tremendous whip. And it's so funny.
It's so good. Well, there's also that scene where they're like, before they go on the date, she's like, the daughter's like, oh, you're going dancing? It's like, well, I'll show you, it's like, floss right now. Start flossing. Floss.
It's like, oh, you know how to dance? Prove it. Floss right now.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know how to break it to you, little girl. Flossing is not
dancing. That's just like a really good, like, it feels like a real genuine, like, writing of a present-day 9-year-old. Yeah. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? Floss right now. Do it.
Yeah. That's something one of our cousins would say.
Yeah. What was the other thing? Oh, okay. This is not a fun thing.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about the gay couple across the hall in this movie. Because that is a weird wrinkle in this story.
They weirdly switch in between being like playfully joking about a gay couple to like weirdly sometimes being kind of homophobic.
Yeah.
Like they don't know. Like, it weirdly feels like they're trying to not be conservative or liberal, but then end up being kind of conservative.
Yeah.
Like...
No, and, like, just so people know what we're talking about, there's, like, this gay couple who, like, lives across the hall from the woman, whose name I don't remember.
The daughter is Sophia. I don't remember what the mom's name is. It's like Jenny or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and they totally are just like the gay best friend in any rom-com. They're just like helping out Dave Bautista and like being friendly and like sort of like adding some like another character, another flavor into the story.
Well,
but like they're such okay. This is the weird thing about it is that there are a couple of bits that are pretty good.
Well, our introduction to them is actually pretty good, and it gave me hope that they were not going to be like just homophobic. Like, well, because they come up. And she wants to go ice skating, so she goes for neighbors that she obviously has some kind of friendship with, and she's like, do you want to take Sophia ice skating? And he kind of makes a joke. He's like, yeah, because all gay people ice skate, And he's like, well, we're fine ice skating. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's okay.
It's like drawing attention to itself way too much, and it just feels like... It just feels like performative and weird. And like just for context, the character itself, there's like 2 characters. One of which is this guy who's, like, really, like, talkative and loudmouthy and feminine, and he's just like, oh, honey, why don't you do this? And, oh, we gotta fix you up. Oh.
Yeah.
And then, like, his husband is, like, this guy who's, like, always really quiet, and every time he goes by, he just goes, which is hilarious.
Yeah, which is a really fun dynamic.
And then the other guy says, he's a therapist, right? And he goes,
Yeah.
And it's very funny. It's a good bit. But, like, the whole time, and then there's, like, a whole bit where... Later in the movie, when Dave Bautista is about to go on a date with the mom, and they come in, they're just like, oh, we gotta fix you up, honey. And they, like, take him home and, like, fix up his outfit and stuff, and you're like, I'm not into this.
But then they make a joke, and they're like, oh, what's his face queer-eyed him. And I'm like, oh, that's not cool.
But then there's this other weird thing where it turns out that actually this whole time they were also secret agents.
Yeah, which is just, it doesn't... affect the plot in any way.
And then, but like, even though they were also secret agents, they are still exactly that same type of people, both.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like an act, they were like still just like that. And you're like, okay, I mean, I guess it's not really different, really.
Yeah.
They're trying to like play it like it's I mean, it is like a fun twist, but like it doesn't like paint them like
any better.
Any differently. They're like represent like their ability to represent like.
Yeah, gayness. I would weirdly be okay if they're like, we haven't been gay this whole time because I've been playing this very stereotypical gay man and you just went along with it. I feel like that would have even been better. Like, even if he was gay and he was like, yeah, I'm gay, but I don't wear a scarf and talk about hummus and ice skating all day long. Like, I don't know. I feel like that would have been better than been like, oh, we're spies, but we're just like this actually, though. Right. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
It's weird.
And it's like, I don't know, I guess the fact that they're giving them like a weird job, like being a spy, is like kind of a more interesting inner life for these characters.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, still, it's just weird. I'm kind of not into it. That said, though, they're both kind of pretty funny.
They're pretty funny. Yeah, they do. They got some good goofs in there.
But anyway. I'm trying to look at my notes. We're almost at an hour, but
yeah, I'm trying to think if this movie passes the Bechdel test.
Yeah, the mom and the daughter talk to each other all the time.
But are they not talking about him sometimes? I guess no, they talk about like ice skating and stuff. Never mind.
Yeah. Unless it was a boy's birthday party, then it doesn't.
Then fuck it. No, it's the Mean Girls party.
That's the weird thing about the Bechdel test, is that it's always kind of unclear when they say, unless it's about a man. It's like you can kind of fudge that sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I think about Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where it's like Gamora and Nebula talk a long time about like their relationship with their father.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think that counts, because they're like talking to each other about their own experiences that just are about like a father figure, not about like a romantic man they're pursuing. And so it's like, I feel like that counts.
Yeah.
But also, the Bechdel test is mostly arbitrary and doesn't necessarily reflect.
No, I just think that the Bechdel test is very interesting and it's something to think about. Yeah. Not to say that a movie doesn't equal feminist if it passes, or not feminist if it doesn't pass. It's just something to keep track of. Like, do these female characters, like, are they their own characters, or do they just talk about men the whole movie?
Right, yeah.
And it's like, sometimes they do, but they're still feminist characters, and sometimes they don't. I just think it's something cool to check up on. And if this movie is still good, but then doesn't pass the Bechdel test, it's like, oh, what does that say about what does that say about the movie itself if it's great but still doesn't pass the Bechdel test? I think it's just an interesting thing to look at.
You know what I've been thinking about? A while ago, the BAFTAs introduced a certain diversity standard for movies that they will nominate for awards, which I don't think I like. And there's been a lot of talk of incorporating it into the Oscars now, too.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of movies that I think that, because first of all, like, the rules basically state that you have to have like a certain number of women or a certain number of people of color or whatever, like, in the movie in order for it to work. But I don't think every story necessarily is the better for having more diversity, quote unquote, in it. Like, I think about this is the first thing that comes to mind, but like Fight Club is like an insane, it's like a deeply biting satire on like the culture of the American white man, right? And the way that the world is the worse for that like stewing like ideology. And like, if you put more, and like, it's very pointed, the fact that everybody involved in the Fight Club is always white. Yeah. And like, it's just about this particular subset of humanity, and like a satire of that specifically. Fight Club would not hold up at all if you like made it adhere to diversity standards.
Yeah, you know? Because it's about how much white men suck.
Right. So, yeah. And it's like, I don't know, and it's this weird thing where it's like, and you know, obviously there are a lot of movies that should be more diverse, and it should be something we're championing for, but making it like a weird requirement for awards feels weird to me.
It also just feels like a weird way to fix the Oscars. Like, it hasn't been, there's not enough movies with black people in it, and that's why black people don't win things. It's like, no, there's different problems, and just forcing more people to be in things isn't gonna fix the problem with the Oscars.
Right. Well, but I don't think that's the line of thinking, because it's not only about making more movies with black people in it. It's also about what the Academy nominates.
Yeah.
Under that rule, it would make sure that you wouldn't only nominate a whole bunch of white men.
I guess that's fair.
It would. I mean, I'm not like flip flopping, but like,
no.
It would solve a problem in a certain sort of way, but I just don't know if it's the best way to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And like, I think that, but and then the other side of that argument is like, but not every story always needs to be told 100% of the time,
Yeah.
Maybe it's time we stop doing fight clubs because we've done plenty of fight clubs.
We've already got Fight Club.
Yeah.
Let's make a different movie.
And it's like, because there are plenty of stories that aren't getting told that would absolutely adhere to those diversity standards. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if we made those instead of something that had to be about white men, you know?
Well,
or like Dunkirk is a good example too.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and it's even if we're making a version of Fight Club that's talking about like white toxic masculinity, it's like there are ways to tell that story in a different way that still gets that message across that isn't Fight Club,
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking about
well, Fight Club is just a totally its own thing.
Yeah, no, that's true. Fight Club is kind of its own can of worms.
It's about toxic masculinity, but it's basically for toxic white men, and that's what it's like about. Like it's pushed towards them.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's for toxic white men.
They've just kind of taken over.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Because Chuck Palahniuk is a gay man who wrote Fight Club, and he's like talking all about like the very specific subset of like hetero white American men, and like the way they interact with the world, and like why they are the way they are, and like all this kind of stuff. And I think that anyway, so that was just a whole big tangent. My Spy, pretty good. Is like perfectly fine. It's like pretty funny.
Yeah.
There's like 5 or 6 times and it got a good laugh out of me.
Yeah.
And I'd watch Dave Bautista do anything.
Yeah.
So
I would watch Dave Bautista eat a phone book.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would rip.
You would rip it in half and then eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just really excited about
watching Dave Bautista eat a phone book.
Well, yeah, that too. But like, I'm just happy that Dave Bautista is the guy who's getting to like be the bankable lead in these movies. Yeah. And there was also Stuber. We haven't talked about Stuber on this podcast. That was like the weird buddy cop movie with him and Kumail Nanjiani.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
It came out and everyone was like, "This is fine." So it's like, I don't know, it's probably pretty good because I would watch Dave Bautista do anything. And the same's kind of true of Kumail Nanjiani also. Yeah. Like, I was so hyped at just the idea of like, that is like a pitch. If I were a studio executive, it'd be like, what if the 2 leads of a movie were Kumail Nanjiani and Dave Bautista? I'd be like, whatever it is, I don't care.
I don't care what it is.
Like, here's $10 million, just do it. Stop. Why are you standing there? Go.
Oh, and they're both white power people.
Well,
bye.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no.
Exactly. And they're both Nazis. And I'd be like, doesn't matter, just do it. I'll watch it. I'll pay $10 for a ticket.
God.
But yeah, and I'm trying to remember if there's like anything, like obviously he's still going to be in like Guardians of the Galaxy and whatever, but I hope he gets a project that's like really cool soon, like another Blade Runner, except instead of just being in one. Is that the ice cream?
The ice cream man.
That's the ice cream man.
Go Jackson, go.